Welcome in Monday Live. My name's Jason Priester of the Clemson Insider. Appreciate everybody that is tuning in here with us tonight, or if you watch later, whenever it may be. Very much appreciate it. From here on out, at least for the foreseeable future, these whatever we want to call them, podcasts, shows, whatever, however you want to term them, will now be presented to you by Trey Humphreys with Old River Real Estate. Looking to expand his clientele by providing the best customer service in the industry. Letting everyone letting everyone know about it. Residential, commercial, investing, buying, selling. He's your guy. He would love the opportunity to help you. Just give him a call today. 843-617-6548. And that will scroll across the bottom for the rest of the night. Next Monday, the Monday thereafter, for several Mondays, it'll be right there for you. Also want to shout out to our friends over at Adams Pest and Termite Control. The best in the business here in the PD. Give Mike and my boys a call over there, 843-858-3166. Clemson is head first into the portal, man. I know there are some people out there that probably thought they'd never see Dabo and Clemson go out and sign double-digit transfers. Here we are. They've added 10 in the past week. Really have retooled the defense. They've added in a bunch of different spots. 9 out of 10 guys are on the defensive side of the ball. If you've decided you're not adding a quarterback, you don't really have many holes on the offense. I'm surprised they even took a running back. Don't get me wrong, it's a good move. I just didn't think they would. Would like to see them add a tackle. I know they've made the effort to add a tackle, a veteran tackle, a guy that's kind of, been in the trenches and has some experience. But if you've got Braden Jacobs already penciled into that left tackle spot, it makes it a little bit more difficult in landing some of these guys, especially the older guys. They want to come in and play left tackle. They don't want to come in and play right tackle. So that might make it a little bit more difficult. I'd be interested to know exactly how flexible they are with maybe moving Jacobs to the right side for a year to get a guy. I've not heard anything about that outside of the fact that it looks like Jacobs is penciled in on the left side. So I know that would make it a little bit more difficult. But, man, the piece they have gotten on the offensive side of the ball, it's a really good one. Chris Johnson Jr., the running back from SMU, anybody that watches Clemson football has watched him this year against Clemson and have some success. One of the fastest guys, or let's say one of the fastest running backs in the nation. He's been clocked at 22.3 miles per hour, and that kind of brings something. I like Clemson's running back room as is with Davidson and Easy, particularly if Jay Haynes could get healthy. But None of those guys have the kind of speed that Chris Johnson has. He's just going to bring a different dynamic, and he's a guy you can use in a bunch of different ways. Um, you go back and think of the way Clemson used to use Artavis Scott. I know Chad Scott was gone by then in 2015 when Scott really had his breakout year, but it was still basically the same offense at that time. Think about how they used Andre Ellington. You can line him up out wide, man. There's a bunch of different things you can do with him. Hopefully, we get to see those little. Golly, I'm drawing a blank right off the top of my head. The things they used to run with Artavis Scott so successfully, man. The little pop passes, kind of like a jet sweep. I guess you could call them a jet sweep, but man, they used to have a lot of success with those things, and I don't know that Clemson's really had the guy to be successful running those kind of things here of late, and they got one now. You put Johnson and Gideon, and particularly if you can figure out a way to get three backs kind of involved, which is a little hard to do, but I mean, I guess you could throw Easy in there, but you have to, with this addition, you have to, think that Clemson's going to be pretty adamant about getting at least two backs involved next year. It's been something they've not done the past couple of years with a new play caller. You would hope that would be something that gets changed moving forward. One of the first questions that comes to mind when you see a guy like Chris Johnson, get at it is Easy going to stick around? It was one of the first things that came to my mind because he's kind of a guy that rumors were already swirling around about him, well before the portal opened. And it looks like he's going to stick around. And all of a sudden you had another running back. But judging by his tweet yesterday, I mean, looks like he's pretty okay with it. You like to see guys welcome the competition. Those are the kind of guys that you want on the team. We'll see what else they tried to do again. I think I think they'll still try to add a tackle, maybe one more defensive tackle. We'll see what comes of that. The most recent guy that was on campus, I don't even know how to say his last name, but the JUCO guy, Andy Burr or something, ended up committing to Nebraska. He went to Nebraska right after he left Clemson, committed to Nebraska late last night, so he's off the board. We'll see if they decide to maybe try and add another interior defensive lineman. You've already got two. I really like the guy from Oklahoma, the Marcus Strong guy, and we'll see about Courtney Kelly. He's listed at 280 pounds, so we'll see. I'm of the opinion you probably need to add one more. And I like all those defensive backs. Man, I really like Elliott Washington. The guy was he can fly. I mean, Clemson lacked some speed and spots on the back end in 2025, and Washington is a guy that brings speed. I like Donovan Starr. Clemson tried to recruit him out of high school. He ends up going to Auburn. And I like both safeties, Myrick and Carter. I don't care what the recruiting services say about transfers, man. If you watch the film, man, there's a lot to like about both those guys. And, man, I really, really like the linebacker. If you'd have told me a week ago that Clemson was going to add Luke Farrelly, man, I would have not believed it. Talking about the ACC freshman defensive player of the year, just killed it there at Cal last past season, last season, however you want to say it. And the bright side with him is he's got a lot of eligibility left. So you would hope that you get him for a while. And one of my favorite ones, man, is London Merritt, the defensive end from Colorado. Clemson, he came to camp a couple years ago. Clemson was trying to recruit him hard. He ends up going to IMG, and, everybody knows that after Venables left Clemson and the relationship between Clemson and IMG got a little rocky. So once he went to IMG, it was pretty much game, set, and match. But he told me himself the night he committed. He said it took him going somewhere else to realize that Clemson was actually the right fit for him after all. I thought that was pretty telling. Sometimes you do get a second chance. He proves it. Donovan Starr proves it. But yeah, a lot of really good pickups so far. We'll see what else they do here over the next few days. Basketball team's on a roll. They come back home tomorrow night. Another quad one win on the road Sunday up at Notre Dame. Thankfully, the Notre Dame head coach didn't try to attack anybody or go after the officials or anything. But they Clemson debuted in both polls today. They're ranked in the top 25 now. That's kind of been a not so good thing for this basketball team over the past few years. They get ranked, they play well, get ranked, and it seems like all of a sudden they'd lose the next week almost immediately. So hopefully that is a path they do not take. Tomorrow's a game they should win anyways at home. And I'm telling you, I still think there's another level this basketball team can go to because you get if Blake Davidson and Carter Welling ever, and even Jake Walleen, if they ever find their shots, man, you lose count sometimes of how many little short jumpers Davidson or Welling or Walleen misses. If those things start falling, man, this team's they can be pretty good, man. They are really good defensively. I remember calling out earlier in the season. I remember saying on here one night that Justin Porter had gotten exposed defensively one night. I forgot who they were playing. It was like one of the first games of the season. Man, he has been really good defensively over the past couple of weeks. If you toss it in his area, he's probably going to pick it off, man. He has really upped his game on the defensive end. He's been a big part of what they are doing. Not going to go 2 hours tonight. I can already tell you that right off the bat. 8:30 latest. So whatever you want to talk about, get them in. I got to drive to Clemson so as soon as I'm done with this. Baseball practice starts tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. We get to talk to Eric Baggett's and some players tomorrow. And then again, you got a basketball game tomorrow night. So I got to hit the road as soon as we're done. And I'm not wanting to leave at 9:30. So 8:30 at the latest. Everyone can breathe now that we have an offensive guy. Yeah, there was a lot of hand wringing going on. If you looked on social media, I've told y'all before, I'm not a big Twitter guy. I don't spend a ton of time on Twitter. I had the past week, but generally speaking, I don't spend a ton of time on Twitter. I got a much bigger following on Facebook, especially since my Twitter account was hacked and stolen. And I had to do a new one. It's at JP Priester, no underscore now. If you want to give me a follow. But yeah, there was a lot of hand wringing over that, man. Everybody wanted to know where's the offense? Where's the offense? But if you really take a step back and if you really followed it and know that it's pretty much been decided they're not going to go after a quarterback, there's really not a lot of holes, man. You're not going to bring in a receiver. No matter what happens with Tristan Smith, you're bringing in 3 in the class that just signed 3 like really good ones. So you're not hurting there. I was of the opinion they could benefit from adding a veteran back to the group just because there was so much inexperience there. Didn't think they would. Didn't sound like they were going to. Just kind of suddenly changed their mind there once Chris Johnson entered and went after him. Maybe if he doesn't go in, they don't even look to take a running back. I'm not sure, but you definitely upgrade that position. But there's just not a whole lot that they're going to do offensively, man. It was really as inconsistent as the offense was at times, it's really the defense that really kind of needed to be retooled. And we've talked about it plenty of times before, just listening to Tom Allen during the season. He flat out said before the Pinstripe Bowl, yeah, we got obvious needs. We're going to have to attack it hard. I know with Clemson's, history of not really using the portal much. And, I get why some people would be kind of, taking the wait and see approach, or being kind of skeptical of that. But Dabo said many times in the past, if he felt he had a gap or somebody left unexpectedly, he had no problem using the portal, and he's had both those things happen this year. And we've seen them; they've gone and hit it. How much more portal mania is there for the Tigers? Happy with the portal class so far? I'm thinking you'll end up with around 12, somewhere in that ballpark, if you get an offensive lineman and take another tackle or another DB. I kind of we'll see if they decide to do that, but I know they want to take an offensive lineman. Why is even getting an old lineman to visit such a challenge? I touched on that at the beginning. I think some of that's got to do with, knowing Braden Jacobs is penciled in to play left tackle. These guys don't want to come play right tackle. They're in the portal to go play left tackle somewhere. That's that's kind of the big spot along the offensive line, if you will. So it might hinder them a little bit. That's why I said earlier, I wonder exactly how married they are to Jacobs playing left tackle. But, Jacobs is a guy that they've invested heavily in for next year. So, I mean, maybe they're not open to moving him. But I do believe that has kind of been the plan. Whoever's brought in would be slotted over at right tackle. It wouldn't hurt my feelings if they brought in a center, but it doesn't sound like that's going to be the case. I am of the opinion that Harris Sewell has severely underperformed, particularly this past season, and he's kind of next in line there at center. Underclassmen's never started at center since Dabo's been the head coach, so I don't know how much I would bank on a guy like Gavin Blanchard beating Sewell out. I think Chance Barkley's probably capable of playing center, but he's a true freshman. I mean, he's not going to win the job. But I think that's been a big part of, and also they've been kind of very. It's been a little bit different with the offensive linemen. They haven't cast this big wide net. They've been kind of very picky about who they've gone after. No QB, we rolling with CV. Is that wise? I don't know if you're rolling with CV or not. It might be I'm expecting there to be an open competition, but there's no quarterback coming. If you suddenly decide to, change lanes and go after a quarterback now, you're kind of screwed. They're basically all off the market. And speaking of that, I got to tell Data Racer, man. I told him last week Sam Levitt wasn't going to LSU. It kind of looks like he is now. But yeah, that's kind of Dabo said, when was it? It might have been right in the lead up to the Pinstripe Bowl that he was kind of planning to stick with what they had on campus and the freshmen that were coming in. And, I didn't believe him, because I don't think, number one, he wouldn't tell you what the plan was, even if they were planning to go get a quarterback out of the portal. He'd have said the same thing anyways. But, I've kind of maintained for weeks now that I didn't believe next year's quarterback was on the roster. Well, they got to prove me wrong. And I don't know if you were here last week or not, but, I kind of talked a little bit about it last week because I always had a reason for saying that. There's some people in that building that are of the opinion that Clemson needs a quarterback, that they're not, fully sold on the inexperienced Vizina. But Dabo's going with his gut. He talked about relying on his instincts more earlier in the season too, something he said he had gotten away from, and he was listening to too many outside voices. So maybe this is one of those examples. But I tend to think that, yeah, even if there's a QB competition, I tend to think Vizina's gonna win it. I'm very anxious to see how they tailor the offense to kind of fit his strengths. Um, while he's probably a little quicker than he has looked in his limited appearances, he hasn't always looked all that comfortable running the ball, and he's certainly not this speed demon by any stretch. And one of the biggest components of Chad Morris's offense is having a quarterback that can beat you with his legs. Somebody's home. What is the relationship? What is the relationship between Coach Luke and Coach Morris? Is it better than the Luke-Riley relationship? I don't know that Riley and Luke had a bad relationship. I don't want to term it that way. I just don't know that their philosophies meshed all that well. Morris has only kind of been there for a couple of weeks now, hadn't even been that long yet. So I can't really speak on what the relationship is like between him and Coach Luke. I'll say this. Morris is a guy that's going to come in and he's going to command the room, whereas Riley's more soft-spoken and a little more laid back. Morris has got that big personality, and people, he's going to command respect from the coaches on the staff to the players in the locker room. He's just kind of got that type of alpha dog personality, and I'm not sure Garrett Riley had that. So it's a stark contrast when you want to start comparing the personalities. But I don't want to sit here and say that he and Matt Luke didn't get along. I don't know anything about that. Never heard that. I just don't know that their philosophies or styles always meshed up all that well. How many more wins? 2. Hopefully we get 10 more competitive pieces. You asking me how many more wins Clemson has next year? I don't know. I'm not sold on the quarterback, so we'll see. But Clemson's not taking 10 more transfers. They're not going to fill every single available spot. They'll have well over 105 players on the roster next year because of the guys that are grandfathered in from the house settlement that weren't on scholarship. But I also don't think you need to fill all 105. If you want to take a little bit of that money that it would cost you to fill those final 4 or 5 spots and use it to enhance a little bit better of a player, to me, that's the way to go. The guy at the number 104 guy on the roster, number 105 guy on the roster aren't very likely to win you any games anyways. Understand the struggles with the O-line, but it just sucks have to target an older guy. But what do you expect from this team record-wise? Because that should indicate how much to spend. I don't know. I think Clemson's got what they got, and you spend what you have. My understanding is it's in the neighborhood of $25 million, and it might be a little bit higher. It could possibly be a little bit lower, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 25, maybe a little bit more than what they had last year. And no matter what, to me anyways, no matter what the expectation for next year is, you go out and spend that money and get as good as you can possibly get. You spend it up. You spin it up. And you do everything in your power to not go 7-6. Is Chris Johnson related to the Chris Johnson that played at East Carolina? If you ask Google if you ask it in 2 different ways, you'll get 2 different answers. But no, he's not. I even got tricked by Google on that yesterday. I had always thought he was Chris Johnson's son too. You know, I've heard that before. I've read it in other places. I read it yesterday in a story about him while he was at SMU. So I Googled it, and sure enough, it says yes, he's Chris Johnson's son. And then we were talking about it last night, and I Googled it again, worded it just a little bit differently. No, he's not Chris Johnson's son. So I dug into it a little bit deeper, and he is, in fact, not his son. Kentucky seems to be bringing in some good players. Guess they found ways to raise funds. Kentucky's got some money. It's just a matter of how they spend it. And they are definitely throwing some around right now. Best running back room in a while, deep, but can Spiller grow under Mars? I got no problem with the way running backs have developed under Spiller. I just don't. I got a big problem with the rotations. But I thought he did a really good job of turning Adam Randall into a serviceable running back. I thought Phil Maffa looked like a different kind of dude over the first few games last season before he got hurt. They won't have anything on offense if they don't get the O-line right. Well, they were never going to go out and add a bunch of pieces to the offensive line. It was never in the cards. It was never the plan. The defense was where the bulk of the work needed to be. Not to mention the fact the offensive line room is pretty much full. We saw one of the young guys leave because he's basically been out recruited in 1 year with Rowan Byrne transferring out and signing with North Carolina. But there's a lot of talent in that room, man. There is a lot of talent in that room. Some of it might not be quite ready next year because, contrary to a lot of people's beliefs, most offensive linemen aren't ready. They're not plug-and-play guys. Many of them, it takes them 2-3 years to be ready to start every day. But somehow they got to find a way to get to those guys. When will be there's no press conference scheduled as of tonight. Do you think Clemson is going to go with the QB currently on? Yes. There's no QBs left in the portal. I mean, they're I don't know of really any more left. There's no update on Tristan Smith other than the fact that he's hired Darren Heitner, one of the best eligibility litigators out there. I don't know if you guys saw it, but a lot of guys got denied waivers last week. Seeing as Tristan's hired a lawyer, that kind of makes me lean towards thinking his might have got denied too. He hasn't said one way or the other, but we saw several guys come out last week who the NCAA denied their waivers, asking for an extra year because of JUCO or whatever reason. So he's gonna. Same thing happened with Chandler Morris. I mean, I don't think his was a little bit different deal, but Chandler Morris is asking for a 7th year, and he says he's going to exhaust all legal means possible. Nobody's really talking about it, but I'm hoping the staff can pull more out of Ashton Hampton this year. Was up and down. That's just my wife back there sneezing. This year was, he was not as consistent as, I know I was one of them. Probably a lot of people thought he would be. But there wasn't a whole lot of consistency on the back end of that defense, period. There were a lot of ups and downs, a lot of busts with the safeties. I think Allen would probably prefer to play more man coverage than he could this year. And Hampton getting to where he needs to be would be a big part of that. Clemson and IG. This happened years ago, man. This not today. Years ago. There were 3 guys from IMG that were committed to Clemson when Brent Venables left to take the job for Oklahoma, or take the job at Oklahoma. All 3 of those guys ended up decommitting, and it burned some bridges. Let's just put it that way. And that relationship's just now recently started to get repaired over the past year. Yes, I lean towards thinking he was denied too. He's not publicly said that, but the fact that he hired the lawyer, leads me to believe that he was denied. 8:30 is the max tonight. 8:30. Yeah, there were just some bridges burned over those guys and the way those things played out with the decommitments and stuff. Clemson's really just kind of started to recruit IMG again. Sure hope we see more 2-back sets in the Morris offense. That makes 2 of us. If you're going to go out and bring in a guy like Chris Johnson, you got to lead. You got to think there's going to be more of that. And we still haven't seen a whole lot of Davidson yet. We definitely haven't. He's nowhere near what he's going to be. But I would think he and Johnson would complement each other very well, because Johnson's just got that explosiveness that none of those other guys have in that room. I surely would hope that's the plan. Will Clemson still use a starting running back to return kicks under Morris? I can't tell you who's going to be the kick returner next year. I kind of hope they do. I kind of hope I hope that Chris Johnson's able to return kicks. Lots of teams use running backs to return kicks. I don't really see the problem with it. Unless you're talking about maybe him getting hurt returning kicks, but you take that risk on every play, no matter whether you're returning kicks or carrying the ball out of the backfield or catching it on a wheel route. How do you shore up the offensive line heading into I don't know what the offensive line is going to look like yet heading into Baton Rouge. I think Clemson's got a lot of talent in the offensive line room. It's young. Yeah, it's inexperienced. The backs are inexperienced. You got to get them experience somehow. You're not going to go to the portal and bring in a bunch of offensive linemen just for one game in Baton Rouge. It kind of is what it is. There will be one or two guys that kind of have to learn on the job. Again, I think you have Braden Jacobs penciled in there at left tackle. Sitting here today, I would probably have Harris Sewell at center. I would imagine that Colin Sadler will be somewhere. Elijah Thurman will be somewhere. And those are guys that have played a lot of football. They're not inexperienced. It's not like you're going to be running a bunch of freshmen out there. What's the expectations on offense next year? To get back to the playoff, win the ACC and get back to the playoff? I can tell you that's the expectation, and to score more points than they've been scoring. And you see there's some incentives there for Morris if they hit certain benchmarks throughout the year. If they're not top 25 in total offense, I think it is, in one of the next 2 years, then they could fire him. I think without having to pay his buyout. I think Chad will use Chris Johnson more in the slot than running back for mismatch purposes. I think you'll see him in the slot plenty. I don't think that'll be the only place you see him in. I mean, you still got Tyler Brown that's going to play too. But there's only one ball. There's only so many reps. The O-line doesn't take significant steps forward in the fall. Will Luke's seat more? No. I mean, we're talking about guys he didn't even recruit. I know. No, I don't think so. No, I get it, man. Everybody's run out of patience. We live in a society where everything's got to be right now. That's not how it works with offensive linemen, man. It's just not. He didn't evaluate any of these guys. He didn't go out and want to recruit any of those guys. That was all done before he got here. Even Braden Jacobs was originally a Thomas Austin target. His first full class has just now got to campus. And as Russell here points out, there it's actually 5 4-star offensive linemen. Wilmus was a 4-star at one time and got dinged down to 3-star late in the cycle, but he's 6'8". Most of those guys are huge, man. They're like a bunch of them are 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". Then you got a couple of them that are a little bit smaller, but still big and athletic. But no, I don't think Luke's seat's warm if guys he didn't recruit can't adapt to his philosophy. I think Clemson's offensive line will probably end up being fine next year. You just got to find the right fits. What do I think about the linebacker from Cal? I think he is much better than number 492 overall, number 42 among the inside linebackers, or number 798 overall, and number 48 among all the linebackers. I don't know what the hell these recruiting services look at, man, when they do some of these rankings. I don't even know how you put a set of rankings out on guys in a matter of a day, especially transfers. I just don't understand it. But the guy was the ACC Defensive Freshman of the Year. He kind of like the same thing with Johnson, man. You know, he brings an element of speed to that running back room that Clemson didn't have. Well, Farrelly's got man, he's fast, sideline to sideline. He's fast. That's just kind of something Wade Wood has lacked. Um, I think he's more athletic than Wood has, and he's got 3 more years left to play. And if you can get him to stick around, that is a huge upgrade. Do I think Denson can push CV? I don't know. I don't have high hopes of that. No, I don't know that he's the passer that people think he is yet. Can he get there? I don't know. Maybe so. But can he get there in a spring? I think that's a big ask. Rayola head to Oregon. Yeah, that one's interesting because there's a possibility that Dante Moore comes back. So I mean, if Moore comes back, the chances of Rayola playing are not so great. I mean, he had to do that knowing that he could possibly sit next year. Vizina inexperienced. How did Clemson fail to develop him in 2-3 years, or he's not played? That's how he's inexperienced. It's got nothing to do with failing to develop him. He's just not played. He's had one start and some mop-up appearances. That's it. And his one start came against one of the worst pass defenses in the country. He's just not very experienced. That's it. The kid behind CV fits Morris's offense. Think they'll give him a chance at being the number one. I think there'll be a competition, between Denson, Vizina, Tate Reynolds, all those guys. I just don't think I'm not convinced Denson is what some others are convinced he is. I got to see a lot more. I've got to see him in practice some. He just doesn't have the strongest of arms. The ball kind of flutters out of his hands sometimes. He's got a wonky throwing motion. And no, Chris, that stuff I said just a minute ago doesn't have anything to do with him being left-handed. The wonky throwing motion does. But some of that stuff you can probably clean up with the mechanics. But I got to see it. I mean, I don't know that he's got the arm strength or he's accurate enough. I mean, I just haven't seen enough. I mean, the little bit I have seen leads me to question whether he has those things. He's certainly got the athleticism. He's certainly electric with the ball in his hands. But it takes a lot more than running the football if you're going to be a quarterback in Chad Morris's offense. We need Chad to turn Vizina into bowl game stout. Well, let's go back to that bowl game and remember that Morris had already left. Every time Stout came into the games that year when Watson got hurt, so we saw a lot of Stout in 2014, it felt like Chad Morris was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It felt like he was still calling the game as if Deshaun Watson was in there and not tailoring what they did to fit Cole Stout's strengths. When they played Oklahoma in the Russell Athletic Bowl that year, Brandon Streeter had come on board, Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott. They all came up with that game plan, and Tony Elliott called it. And it looked much different than what they were doing with Stout, during the regular season. That's kind of that's kind of been one of my questions about bringing Morris back. Sometimes he tried to fit square pegs into round holes back then. I guess the hope is that he's evolved in that department. I believe we'll have a lot more continuity on offense moving forward. Hope so. Anyways, we've got to be able to run the ball so the defenses aren't able to pin their ears back. Yeah, look, I'm not, like I said last week, I was kind of talked off the ledge a little bit about the Morris hire, but I still got mixed emotions about that thing, man. Or mixed feelings or mixed thoughts, however you want to say it. I'm just not a big believer in dipping back into the past to try to recreate some old magic. The guy has not caught a play in 5 years. I've been banging my head against the wall, griping about Riley not making the running game a focal point of the offense and sticking to it when they do, or abandoning it, or whatever. Dabo's been critical in that regard, or he was in that regard during the regular season. And there were some times when Morris used to abandon the run too. I mentioned this last week. That game in Columbia, man, when Roderick McDowell had, I think it was 15 carries for 95 yards in the first half there in Columbia, and this was one of those years that Clemson had the better team. They should have won that game. But just watching it, it felt like they didn't just want to win. Winning wasn't good enough. They wanted to blow them out. So in the second half, I think McDowell got 5 carries, and it felt like they were trying to score 2 touchdowns every time Taj Boyd dropped back to pass. And I think they ended up losing by double digits. But again, that's, over a decade ago. Morris is older. He's wiser. He's been to a lot of different schools since then. He's been a head coach a couple of times. He's kind of his philosophies and his principles have kind of evolved over the past couple of years, and there's probably a lot of things that he did back then that he's learned from. What's for supper? If you're looking for supper, don't come to my house, man. My wife, she just does not cook anymore. My thoughts on if Clemson should or should not go for QB in the transfer portal. If you like a QB in a portal, I've maintained all along. I thought Clemson needed to go get a quarterback. I've been saying it for weeks, but what I say does not count. I'm not the one making the decision. They're not going to get one. Has a safeties position coach been officially named, or do you expect it soon? I don't expect any more new, position coaches to be hired. If you read Dabo's statement when they let go of Khan, I want to say he used the word restructuring. I have to go back and read it again, but there was something he said in there. But I've been led to believe that they brought in Kariko Wright, who's going to be over one of the positions. Looks like Mike Reed's coming back. He'll be over the corners, I'm sure. And Nolan Turner might be over the safeties, Wright be over the nickels, or vice versa. I don't know, with probably Thomas Allen overseeing the room in the meetings. That's kind of the way I see it playing out. That's right, man. Smash the like button. Don't you think Clemson helped the starting lineup in the portal, but they aren't going to have depth on defense? It's a long season now. I think they did a little bit of both. I'd probably like to see one more defensive back added, but you added 2 corners. You already had Ashton Hampton and Brendan Stroger was playing well down the stretch last year. And Corey, the light kind of came on for Corey and Gibson there over the back half of the season. So, I mean, it's not like you paper thin because Corey can play nickel or corner for you. And at safety, I wouldn't mind seeing one more added there. I mean, that they're not quite as deep there, but I think you got some depth at linebacker. I think you got some depth at end now by taking 2 defensive ends out of the portal. And I think you got a little depth there at defensive tackle now that you know that Champ Thompson's coming back, which was a wild story last week. Now that you know Champ Thompson's coming back, and hey, let's just throw Caden Story in there too, even though, they keep moving him from end to tackle to tackle to end to end to tackle to tackle to end. To me, Stephon Green's one of the biggest. That's probably the biggest loss because he was going to be a starter next to Amari next year. But again, I really like the kid they brought in from Oklahoma. There's a lot of people. I know he didn't really show it in the bowl game, but he's still young, and there's a lot of people that are high on Champ Thompson. Still got Evan Brown Schuler. You brought in Big Cam Cody in this recruiting class, and there's a couple more I'm probably forgetting. But no, they don't. I mean, to your point, they don't have the depth. You're not going to have the depth that you had back in the day, not in this era. Not with free transfers and guys being able to move around, year to year. Teams just aren't going to be able to stack depth that way, the way they used to be able to do it. Devil's advocate should have went to the portal for QB. Riley didn't give CV a chance to be successful. Limited snaps, playing with backups, and even more terrible play calls in case. You and I are never going to agree on this. Because here's another devil's advocate. Chris Vizina didn't earn the opportunity to get that time. The fact that they never turned to him during the season when Cade was struggling so mightily speaks volumes to me. And I've been told by more than one person that he didn't earn it. He didn't earn it with what he was doing in practice. He's just not been that. He just hasn't been that. I think I said last week, I used to hear good things about Vizina all through last spring, through fall camp. And as we got through the season, man, the tone just started to change a little bit. And we're talking about a team that had playoff aspirations, started 1-3, big part of that being inconsistent quarterback play, and the backup never got an opportunity. That's not because of blind loyalty. The great teams are filling out the entire 105. Clemson will have more than 105 players on their roster next year. They will use all 105 scholarships. I never said they wouldn't. I just said they won't fill all the empty spots through the portal. And I don't know why you would want them to, because it affects the type of player you're able to get for the spots higher on the depth chart through the portal. I mean, it's I know everyone wants to talk about the transfer portal. So what about the job that Brownell did with his? Brownell has learned, he's been a master at navigating the portal, pretty much since its inception. You go back to that Sweet 16 team, man, that thing was built on, the heart of that team was transfers, or at least the guards. And he's kind of retooled it through the portal every year. What he did this offseason with only having one, experienced player coming back and Dylan Hunter and some freshmen, had to go add all those players out of the portal, man. They've been better than I thought they'd be. DJ Lagway isn't. He is not. If Clemson was going to take a quarterback in the portal, to me, he is not what they needed. Compared to last year, I'm excited to see what the fresh faces on the offensive line can do. The vets were underwhelming. Yeah, Clemson's offensive line was definitely underwhelming last year, but I don't think it gets talked about enough how they were just how many times did we see different guys in different spots in a different starting five? If you don't have the same five playing together week after week, man, it just it takes its toll on the cohesiveness. When you got guys continually going down with this injury or that injury, man, it just totally changes things. And 2 years in a row, Clemson's offensive line's been besieged, by injuries. You've got to see if you can identify what the root cause is there, and if there's anything you can do to maybe help prevent some of those things. The shirt is red, not garnet. It might show up garnet, but it is blood red. It does look a little garnet in this light. Them not going after a quarterback, is that them having confidence in the talent they have, or confidence in Morris developing them, or both? I would say both those things. And I'll add a third thing in there that potentially could have, swayed the decision. Number one, you don't stick with what you have unless you have confidence that he's going to be what you think he can be, because it's the most important position on the field. But deciding not to go get a quarterback, that has an impact on your bottom line, and it frees up a little bit more money that you can use to go get what you did get, if that makes sense. I wanted them to get a lesser known QB like Taron Dickens from Western Carolina. Outrageous stats. Not many offers in the portal. Yeah, that was my thing all along. I kept saying over and over, if they go get one, don't look for one of those top tier guys like Sam Levitt or the Hoover kid from TCU. I would look in a tier below that, and that's kind of where I'd put Dickens and the kid from Michigan State and the kid from Harvard. Turns out Dabo does not want to go that route. Is baseball practice open to public? Yes. I don't know what time they are or anything like that, but they tend to be open to the public. They a lot of times on the weekends they'll play inter-squad scrimmages. Indy or Miami? If you're a Clemson fan, you better be pulling for Miami. I mean, I'm Indiana. Miami winning and making this deep run is not good for Clemson, man. Y'all can pull for them because they're an ACC team, but it is not good for Clemson. But give me the 23, 24, and 25-year-old guys. Indiana's got a team full of them dudes. Matter of fact, I ran across this thing today, and my buddy sent it to me, so I've seen it twice now. There are 47 players on Indiana's roster between the ages of 22 and 25. In the NFL, there are only 140 players total between the ages of 21 and 22. It gives you an idea just how what kind of how that team's full of grown men. Yeah, all those IMG guys that decommitted ended up being really good players. I don't know if you caught the first part of the show data, but I did eat some crow. I remember telling you last week Levitt wasn't going to LSU, and it looks like he probably will now. But I remember last week, right before we jumped on here, I had a buddy of mine text me that he was surprised Levitt was looking at Indiana. I had misread it. He said, I thought he had said, I'm surprised. Let me start that over. I got a text from a buddy that said, I'm surprised that Levitt is looking at Kentucky. I misread it. I thought he said, I'm surprised Levitt is going to Kentucky. So I thought it was already a done deal. So I got to eat some crow on that. Any chance we play a week 0 game? It looks like that's not happening. I know LSU and Clemson both wanted to move games to week 0 so they could kind of have a tune-up game before their big one in Baton Rouge. A lot of other teams had that same idea too, and the NCAA said no to all of them. What do we know about the Howard kid? Hold on one second. I got to answer this. The Howard kid. Yeah, I don't really know a lot about him. He, like you say, he's kind of flying under the radar, man. They didn't even rate him. Neither one of the services. He had 5 sacks. Golly, I can't even remember what his size is off the top of my head. Hold on, let me look it up. 6'2", 230 pounds. 240 pounds, excuse me. Oh, look at there. 24/7 did finally rate him today. He's the 138th ranked edge rusher. I don't know how you do that when they're making that jump. I think it strengthens the room. You've got Lawson, you've got Helt, you've got the Merritt kid, you've got, Eric Watford, who's going to be fully healthy, and he'll hopefully have a full spring and fall under his belt. Darian Mayo's still around, and then you add this kid and the London Merritt kid in. That's pretty good depth there. Even if you got to use one of those guys as a pass rushing specialist. All right, I got to answer this again. Does Tyler Brown start versus LSU? I would think so. Yeah. Well, you know what? Brown probably gets to start, man, but I wouldn't be shocked to see Naheem Burrows on the field a lot. One second here, fellas. I got to. All right. I wouldn't be surprised to see Naheem Burrows on the field a lot, man. That guy, talking about speed, he's got it too, and he's going to be hard to keep off the field. Most teams use a third down back, or preferably a young, talented back that's not getting a lot of carries. Using your starting running back isn't common. Has been at Clemson the past couple years. That's kind of been my biggest gripe with Spiller is the rotations. But yeah, I mean, my hope would be that you find you have a rotation of three that you can lean on with Gideon and Chris Johnson kind of being the top two, and then you let Easy and Haynes, assuming he's back healthy, kind of battle it out from the scat back spot or the third down back spot or whatever it may be. See Gavin Blanchard and Grant Wise working in the starting roles by the end of the year. Don't discount Easton Ware, man. I think he's going to be a really good one. But yeah, I'm a big believer in Gavin Blanchard. Clemson wanted him from the jump. I don't know if for you guys that don't follow recruiting, he visited Clemson several times early, and then all of a sudden, during the summer, he didn't take an official to Clemson. He ended up, I don't think he did anyways, but he ended up committing to UCF. But the reason was because of his grades. You got to hit a certain benchmark with your grades if you want to go play football at Clemson. And, he hadn't done that. So he finally got him up, getting towards, that fall, getting towards signing day. And Clemson told him they'd take him. So he flips from UCF to Clemson. But yeah, that's a guy that they believe can be the center of the future, man. I forgot what Dabo called him. When they call him a dirt dog or something like that. I forget what it was, but yeah, I've been a big fan of his ever since the first time I watched his film. What about Juju Preston? Is he good? I don't know what they've got in Juju yet. He's just not. We've not really seen him. He was supposed to be an early enrollee, and I don't think he enrolled early. He ended up enrolling in the summer, and he got hurt, if I'm remembering right. I know he got hurt in fall camp. But we just hadn't seen a lot of him. He only weighs about $170, $175. So we'll see. But he's a guy that can move, man, and he's twitchy. He'll probably carve out a role for himself at some point. It's just a matter of when. Yeah, Grant Wise he's a monster, man. He's strong as an ox. He's won a couple of weightlifting competitions, at least one. Dude's he's a grown man. Did you hear the story of Georgia suing a former player? Yes, I did. He signed with Georgia. A few days later, he ends up wanting to enter the transfer portal, and part of the deal was if you enter the portal after you sign, you owe us this much money. So Georgia's suing for the money. It's kind of something similar that we just saw with Washington. Their quarterback signs. 4 days later, he gets a better offer from guess who? LSU. I think Miami might have been in on that too. But all of a sudden, he goes to him and says, "Hey, I want to enter the portal." And they say, "Hey, we're not entering your name into the portal. You just signed. Part of that agreement said that we are not obligated to enter your name into the transfer portal since you signed." And he was also, agreed to pay him a big fat sum of money if he left. And he actually hired the same lawyer that Tristan Smith's hired. And within a day, he announces he's going back to Washington. Luke has recruited elite talent at offensive line. Yeah, man. He's this was just his first, full class. I just think we just gotten away from having any kind of patience with these guys. Yeah, I have not said anything about going undefeated and winning the Natty next year. I haven't even hinted at that. Yeah, the rankings are atrocious, man. I just do not understand how you can a guy can enter the transfer portal one day and you've got him ranked later that same day. I just don't get it, man. Farrelly and Brown, we should have good speed at the second level. Yeah, I think so. And it's not like, you still got Jeremiah Alexander. Hold on, man. I'm trying to set up a call with a recruit here, man. Yeah. He's definitely an upgrade, man. He brings a lot of traits that Wade Woodaz didn't have. And you still got Jeremiah Alexander, and I know people like to dump on Kobe McLeod, but man, if you go back and look at the PFF grades if you're a PFF grade person, a lot of weeks he was the highest graded linebacker for Clemson. Even though he didn't play a ton, but he'd be the highest graded dude, particularly over the front half of the season before Sammy really started to kind of settle in and get in the zone. But I think Sammy and Farrelly are gonna make a heck of a duo. Hey, y'all listen to my man. Hit that like button. There are currently 946 people watching this thing. That's not all of those are on YouTube, though, to be fair. Some are on Facebook, some are on Twitter, some are on like 3 different Facebook pages. So yeah, Pennington's coming back next year. Do I think Tate Reynolds can push CV? I have my doubts. A year ago, I thought it was possible that he could come in and push for the job, but he missed pretty much his entire season this year, his senior season. That's a lot of development to miss for a guy that wants to come in and try to win a starting job at a place like Clemson. Is it impossible? No. I just think it's a little more unlikely. Portal rankings have to be blind AI. I've kind of, seriously, I've kind of wondered if there's maybe some AI involved or some kind of algorithm or something that I just don't know how they do them that fast. Especially if, and to me, you need human eyeballs doing those things. It's still subjective that way, but I don't know. I put less stock into portal rankings than I do PFF grades. Why does Dabo seem more loyal to the QB position than the running back position since he just went and got Chris? I see. This is where a lot of people are not going to agree with me, but I don't think it has anything to do with loyalty. I might not be a believer in Chris Vezina. Some people in that building might not believe he's the guy that they need to roll out there next year. But Dabo believes it. He's the boss, man. His opinion is really the only one that matters because he gets to make the final call. I don't think it has anything to do with loyalty. I think when Chris Johnson entered the portal, they saw an opportunity to upgrade their roster. They didn't just want to take any old running back. they've got some good backs in that room already. There was a certain type, and Johnson fit that mold. And when he entered, they went after him. That's what I think it's about. Clemson's not going after a QB, and I've not seen anybody suggest that they were going after one of the elite ones, anyways. Even when we were talking about it. That's right. Baseball season is a little over a month away. Opening day is the weekend of Valentine's Day, 3-game home series against Army. We are actually probably going to turn this show into that show. We're probably going to do it on Mondays. I talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago. Doing 2 last year, it just got to be a little too much for me. For those that you don't know, I actually live in Florence. So I have to drive to Clemson every week for baseball, home baseball series. And Thursday's kind of like my travel day. So by the end of the year, man, that doing 2 and doing 1 on my travel day it really started to wear on me, man. And I was exhausted. Not quite as exhausted as I was this weekend after all the comings and goings of last week, but I think we're just gonna, like the week before baseball season, we're Ashby's gonna come on here that night on Mondays, and we're just gonna, instead of being we're gonna be baseball heavy, not necessarily baseball specific. We'll probably talk both, but I don't think we're gonna do a baseball specific show on Thursdays. But she's definitely gonna come on here on Mondays. Once we get the baseball season, and the plan is for her to be here every Monday. They and while we're talking about that, January 26th, 2 weeks from today, no show that night. Clemson doesn't have money to go out and pay $5 million for a QB. They have to be able to retain the main guys too. Only chance would be to get a lesser known guy. How much better would be than Vizina? I am of the opinion Clemson could have went and got a quarterback. No, I didn't. They're not going out and paying $5 million for a portable quarterback. No, but I think you could probably have found one in the 1.5, 2 million range, probably rather easily. But like I said a minute ago, I'm not the one they pay to make those decisions. Baseball team seems to be underrated going into the season. They're ranked in the top 25. I don't know. That's probably about where they should be preseason. You got some. I think it's fair to question the pitching, and we're talking about a team that had very little pop last year, but Backus did make some moves in the portal to address that lack of power. And man, I've said it on here several times now that I was really encouraged by what I saw from the pitching back during the fall. I had a guy up there tell me that this is the most polished group of freshmen that have come pitchers, polished group of freshman pitchers that have come through since he's been there, and he's been around since before Backett. So, but I was encouraged. All right, got to wrap this thing up. Whoever thought we could have had Matt Luke and Todd Monken back together and not pull the trick? Yeah, I don't know how realistic that was. Only thing I can say is there was some interest there. I don't know, man. I can't. My wife has all of a sudden just quit feeding me dinner, man. I don't know what the hell's going on around here. Chad was with Clemson in 23. Offensive advisor, any thoughts you have about how he helped in that time that he was with Clemson? Not really. He was basically an unpaid volunteer, and from my understanding, he came in 2-3 times a week to kind of help with scouting opponents. He didn't have some big role in the offense. My thoughts on current high school recruiting efforts. Ask me again in March after the elite retreat. I've said it many times. It feels like Clemson kind of hit the pause button on the 27 class. Just didn't see a lot of 27 guys visiting after the LSU game. And to me, that's probably the right way to go because you could we're really not after the Troy game. And once you're sitting there at 1-2 and 1-3, you can kind of get a sense of how the season's going to go, and you don't want to bring those guys in to experience that. And so they got a little momentum, perception wise from some of the stuff they've done in the portal. You're able to bring back TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco. You're able to keep Olsen, Pat Henry. You're able to keep Gideon Davis, and looks like you're keeping Azui Umame, and you're doing all that despite not taking a quarterback. That does, all those guys staying despite them not going and taking a quarterback does make me feel a little bit better about that. But we'll see. The elite retreats the weekend of March the 7th. Matter of fact, that's who I was texting back and forth with on the phone. There was a guy that was telling me he's coming. He's a 28 guy, actually. 5-star defensive lineman Asher Gitto, teammate of Naheem Burrows. Don't see many rising juniors getting invited to that event. But 5-star linebacker Caden Henderson told me he's coming. 4-star wide receiver Jamar Simmons. 4-star offensive lineman Carter Jones. 4-star offensive lineman Nate Carson. Wide receiver target DJ Huggins. 4-star running back Andrew Beard, who does not have an offer. 4-star tight end Jackson Dollar. Those are all guys that have told us they're coming so far. Losing weight. Somehow, dude, I've gained like 35 pounds in the past 2 years. I don't know how the heck that happened. I wish I could lose about 10 pounds. Why did Ricardo Jones leave? Because he thought he was worth more than Clemson was willing to pay him. I haven't heard anything specific about Chris Johnson, but I could probably see the same scenario with him. Hearing on Amari Adams. I was talking about him the other day. He's coming back from the injury. He'll probably not be full go in the spring. Don't think that's decided yet, but that's what I was told. He probably won't be full contact in the spring, but he's well on his way to recovery, man. I think he's one of the starting defensive tackles next year. Yes, you can still sign guys after the portal closes on the 16th. As long as you can get them in school if you want them to, if you want them to be on campus for spring practice, you got to make sure you can get them enrolled for this current semester, which I think's already started. Like the defensive tackle that just committed to Nebraska. I think his rep told us he wasn't he wasn't enrolled until the summer. So a guy like that you could wait on. But yeah, you don't have to have all your guys signed by the 16th. They just have to enter by the 16th unless they're on a national title or playing in the national title game. Give me Brock Bradley as a starter. The kid's got, he gets overlooked, man. That dude's a gamer. He is a gamer, man. He's been starting, I think, since a freshman 6A ball in Alabama. That's nothing to sneeze at, man. And he can play. He's got an extremely high football IQ. If he was just the only thing that's held him back from being like a top flight prospect is he's a little tad undersized. If he was a little bit bigger, man, every school in the country would have been in on that kid. All right, I got to wrap this up. Watch Vizina every Friday night in high school. He was definitely a dual threat guy. I'm confused why everyone's thinking he's a pocket passer. Yeah, he's like I said earlier, he's definitely quicker than he's looked in some of these games that we've seen him in. He doesn't have like elite speed. People say that because they didn't watch him in high school the way you did. They've just seen what they've seen while he's been at Clemson, and he's not always looked comfortable running the ball. To me, that's just more about comfort level in general, as opposed to not being comfortable running the ball. Because I've been told many times he's a better runner than people think, and he's quicker than people think. Heard we are often Ty Simpson 6 to. If you heard that about Clemson, I don't think there's anybody offering Ty Simpson $6 million. You got to be very wary of some of these numbers that get floated out there because they come from the agents, and the agents are trying to drive the value up and the market up for the guy they're representing. No better way to do that than to float out some outrageous number. Can't imagine offering rev share to players beyond 80 or 85 on the 105 roster. Clemson's already taken a cap hit by offering scholarships to all 105. I don't think you have to. If I read it right the other day, I'm thinking you don't, or it's going to start next year. I think maybe in 27, where you don't have to count the scholarships under the cap. Or I have to go back and look. I think it was Ross Dellinger that put that out, or heck, it might have been that lawyer Darren Heighton. I can't remember. Try to find that on Twitter. But I do remember that I think it was starting in 27 that's not going to count. But yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to say earlier. Why you want to go spend that money on the bottom 5 or 10 guys on the roster when you can have a little bit extra to give to to attract some other guys in? I mean, the last 5, 6, 7, 8 guys on the roster is not the guys that are going to be winning you games. Why am I looking past your lap? Why are you looking past my question? What was your question? Oh, this? So you are saying Chris won't be the starting QB? I would lean towards thinking a Chris will be the starting QB. Yes. I have not said, I don't know what Chris you're talking about. I've not said that Vizina's not going to be the starting QB. I've said I don't think Denson's going to be. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, but I don't think it's going to be him. You got to be more specific with what Chris you're talking about. That's why I skipped it over, because I don't know which one you're talking about. talked about this last week too. Will there be a difference? You got a new man in charge. Absolutely, there's going to be changes. Just that we're talking about a guy that the Minnesota Vikings wanted to hire. I think it was the Vikings, right? That wanted to hire to run their S&C department. You don't just walk off the street and get handed those kind of jobs, man. You got to have the credentials, the qualifications, the experience, and you have to have been around the block and produced. And if you look at where Dennis Love's, he was at Clemson a long time ago. He came back 2 or 3 years ago, and he's been working under Batson ever since. That does not mean the there's not going to be any changes. To me, there's been nothing really wrong with Clemson strength and conditioning. Maybe over the past couple of years after Batson started having some health issues and he lost a couple of his assistants, it kind of fell off a little bit. But, man, I think Batson used to catch a lot of unnecessary grief back in the day. Clemson's had the same strength and conditioning coach going back since before Dabo was hired. Same guy he was the strength and conditioning coach during those national title teams. But yeah, there'll be some changes, man, and Love's already took it over. All right, this is the last one. I got to roll. Think Morris's kid wins his suit to come. I don't have any idea. He's not even entered the portal. So, but Virginia's making quarterback plans for next year already. Dude, I don't even have super chats, man. Nobody pays for the comments here. Nobody. All right. Aaron Nolan's still in the port. There's a reason why. No, I do not have a cold. Was it Dirtbag that he called him? I couldn't remember. I'm talking about Gavin Blanchard. Yeah, Juju is not 5'4" and 160 pounds. I have been up next to him. He is definitely not that. I think he's about up to 170 now. He's probably about 5'11". They got him listed at 6 foot. He's probably in the 165, 170 range now. Jordan Hall is not even in the transfer portal. He's not. I've not heard anything about him leaving Georgia. Yeah, he was at Clemson the other day because his girlfriend's on the track team at Georgia, and they had a meet at Clemson. Yeah, I talked a lot about Morris last week. I'm still I'm on the fence on that thing, man. Like I said earlier, I'm not a big uh, a big believer in going backwards and and trying to recreate some magic from 15 years ago. But I I'm one of the many that thought Garrett Riley was a good hire. So all right. Yeah, I talked about baseball earlier, man. I've been encouraged by what I saw in the fall. Right back here next Monday, the Monday after that, no show that week, 2 weeks from tonight, but we'll be right back here next Monday, 7 p.m. I'm gonna try to get Brandon back on. We'll probably have all the portal pieces in place by then. Get him to talk a little bit about Chad Morris. He's actually played for Chad Morris, and I know he is a big fan of the hire. One more, put all the false media narrative and Miami hate aside. If you're rocking with the you know what to do. Show your daddy Mario Cristobal support. Throw those you Dabo doesn't have to know. Sorry, man. Miami winning is bad for Clemson. Clemson fans, you should not be pulling for Miami, even if they do play in the ACC. Not to mention the fact they ain't sharing none of that playoff money with you. Want to thank our new sponsor, Trey Humphreys with Old River Real Estate. He's looking to expand his clientele by providing the best customer service in the industry. Residential, commercial, investing, buying or selling. Trey would love the opportunity to help you. Give him a call, 843-617-6548. Trey Humphreys, Old River Real Estate. And if you're in the PD and you need some pest control, call my man Mike and the crew, Adams Pest and Termite Control, 843-858-3166. A lot of stuff coming on the site over the next few days. Again, right back here next Monday, 7 p.m. Till then, check us out, ClemsonInsider.com.